Welcome, everyone, to the Nerd Journey Podcast, episode number 58. We're joining you every week to talk IT career progression and bring you the advice we wish we'd been given earlier on in our careers. I'm your host, John White, at BJourneyman on Twitter, joined by my co-host, Nick Cordy, at NetworkNerd_. Hey, Nick, how's it going?
Hey, John, I'm doing great. We are both pre-sales technical engineers with backgrounds in IT operations. We hope our career discussions will be vendor neutral, relevant across disciplines, and remain timeless. If you're enjoying our content, please drop us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you subscribe. And if you want to get in touch with us, tweet or DM at Nerd Journey. Ultimately, we're just two nerds on a journey.
A journey to virtual enlightenment.
So let's take a trip.
Great, Nick. Hey, a actual interview episode again. And not only that, an interview with Kelly Schroeder about a management career. And in true Nerd Journey fashion, a two-parter.
That's so unexpected, John.
We can't keep it to just one.
There's too much goodness.
Too much goodness. Hey, I really actually enjoyed this first part. Listening to it again. Kelly has an interesting background, that business education that he had, not just the technical stuff. That was a really interesting precursor. And I think I said it in the moment. It also kind of sounded like what you need to be a good pre-sales technical engineer too.
Yeah, you definitely did. I remember that.
Yeah, and then that kind of it was difficult to hear. But his reflections on what led to kind of a burnout in his career, and just listening to him reflect on the run-up and what actually led to that, and how he overcame it. Very, very interesting and inspiring, actually.
Yeah, I think that's a situation probably many folks can relate to, and then of course, what happened after that, and maybe some folks can relate to that too. I actually enjoyed the similarities to Charlie Nichols episodes. I specifically, what jumped out at me the most was the fact that both he and Charlie Nichols did not want to be managers. Kelly specifically had a certain perception of what managers did and what they were like, and he didn't want to be that. But without further ado, let's get to the interview. This is Kelly Schroeder, Part 1.
Kelly Schroeder, thanks for joining us on the Nerd Journey Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us who you are and what your job is today?
Well, as you said, my name's Kelly Schroeder. I work for a city government as a manager for the help desk. Let's see, basically everything client related, software licensing, desktops. Manage a team of about 15 people, and yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Cool. Is that something that you've always been on kind of like the end user, like device and software side?
Well, up until this point, I've been in small business. So that means yes. And, kind of you wear all the hats in small business. I've worked for a defense contractor. That was a company of about 70 people. Prior to that, it was a 2-year college, and then web development firm, and different stints mixed in there where I've worked for myself.
Oh, that's really interesting. So you've had a variety of different industry jobs, like work for a bunch of different industries.
Yeah, actually there was a GIS company in there that I forgot. So yeah, all over.
Nice. Now, what actually drew you to the technology space, Kelly? Because the three of us met through the Spiceworks community. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, how'd you get into IT? A lot of people, they didn't study it, they fell into it. How about you?
Yeah, well, right after got married, moved back to where I grew up, and was looking for a job. And a friend of mine, his dad um, worked for a big company, and they needed people to install wiring. So I got started pulling network wiring in about 2000, installing Cat 5, and
Did you have your own crimper?
yeah, I had all the tools, and I quickly realized that I was interested in it, and I didn't want to keep doing it for the rest of my life. And so then I started working with the moves, adds, and changes, and started thinking, this computer stuff is actually really interesting. And um, this guy got laid off, went back to school, and here I am.
Nice. So you actually studied it a little bit, or did you get a degree in something completely unrelated?
Well, so I went to a 2-year college first, and that was a very technically focused degree. And then I went to a 4-year college because everybody said you need a bachelor's. And so I got the bachelor's, but I got one in business administration. That was kind of accidental because at the time, the local 4-year college, only had computer information systems in the business college. So the computer science department was just code and like heavy math coding, not even web development or lighter stuff. And I'm not wired for that.
That's so funny. I would still say, like, computer science is very, algorithmic or, software engineering focused. If you want to get into IT, like there are actually very few 4-year institutions that have degrees that are relevant to it. Like, computer information systems, or, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, they'd call it management information systems. And before that, they would call it, business analysts, or, something along those lines. So it's interesting that you're able to find a institution that had it.
Yeah, and being local, that made it all the better. But that's kind of shaped actually one of my recommendations that I make to people when they ask me, what should I go to college? This is a discussion that I see frequently on forums and I get into in person is, should I get a 4-year degree? Do I need a degree? And, I think it depends. I know there's a lot of strong opinions on this. And you guys probably heard a lot of the strong opinions even here, but
We've heard a lot of "it depends."
This will light up the internet. I'm excited.
But I think my recommendation for most people is, especially if they don't already have a career path where they're currently at, would be to get a degree, but to get a degree in something they care about. Not necessarily computer, whatever. Most organizations just look to see if you have a degree. There aren't a lot of organizations that say, well, I want somebody with a degree from this university in this discipline, therefore I'm going to hire you and pay you $10,000 more. So getting in, do something you love. If you're not sure what you love, then get something in business. Most IT people are bad at business, at least communicating. And so I encourage everyone that is going to get a degree to at least take some classes in business and understand it, know how to talk the talk, and be able to communicate in ways that the business decision makers can understand.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You said if you don't know what you love, if you don't know what you love, then you might want to spend some time thinking about that too.
Yeah,
like that's a bigger problem, right? But honestly, it's something that plagues a lot of people. They need to figure out what it is that they want to do with their lives, right?
Yeah.
Well, and I think there's some place where people they know what they love, but they don't know how to get a degree in that. I love video games, board games. I can't really get a degree in those things, so it's just get the degree in something then that's practical. And most four-year universities are terrible at IT.
Hmm. Yeah. Hey, something else that you said, which was maybe as a default get a business degree. That I find that very interesting. A lot of business programs focus on things like financial modeling and like kind of basic accounting backgrounds that I think a lot of technologists don't have any ideas about. Have you found that helpful in your career?
Significantly. The ability to be able to compile a budget, to be able to market my ideas in a way that is using their terminology rather than mine has been significant to the success of different things that I've had to do.
And that communication between the two parties, the technology department and the rest of the organization, is the one that needs the most work, it seems like.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's worse with executives. I can translate, a technical need for, the guy who loves cars pretty easily. Just about anybody can find a point of reference, but business decision makers, they want it converted. They want everything converted into bottom line, no matter what their hobbies or interests are. So at the end of the day, they're going to want to know, is this going to move the dial on my organization? Not just, do I understand it from how it relates to my favorite hobby?
Sure. And I think people who get into the IT field, a lot of times they end up working the help desk, right? Level one tech support. They probably don't realize that a lot of the frustration for not being able to get the things they want to do funded is from this inability to articulate exactly those things that you just mentioned.
Yeah, definitely.
I definitely, I think I learned that lesson after I joined VMware, right? And I got training in sales, and the salespeople were trying to articulate, or I guess the company was trying to articulate to the salespeople how IT leadership, viewed IT projects in terms of, how does it relate to the business goals of the company and not to the technology goals of individuals, within the technology stack. So, I got these lessons and I went, oh man, I was not getting my projects funded, and it was because I had no idea what my direct superiors had as far as like management objectives or business goals, and nothing I was saying had any relationship to those objectives that they had.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because sales has such a negative connotation for most people in IT. The idea that they would ever sell something or go into, I mean, it's like people look down on pure technical people tend to look down on people that go into technical sales. And the reality is that those people in technical sales have a better chance of getting what they want done.
If you have the right toolbox, right, and you get trained, and unfortunately, like I would say that's one of the gaps in the technology and IT is training people how to speak and think in ways that relate to their upstream management. That's unfortunately, the case, but it is what it is. And maybe, as part of our, goal of educating people and what they need to do to become more effective in their jobs, maybe we can help turn that around.
Sounds like a worthy goal.
Here's a question I want to pose to both of you. So we'll start with you, Kelly, since you're the guest. Now, would you say that this ability to communicate or training in sales, training in business naturally leads someone to a career progression that involves being a manager or not?
I had no desire to be a manager when I went to school. It was kind of the degree, I just sort of fell into business just because that was where the IT program was. It wasn't until years later that I discovered how much value I'd gotten from all the accounting, all the finance, all the marketing and sales training that I'd gotten as just part of my degree that I actually thought was mostly wasted time at the time.
That's fascinating. It makes me want to go to my local college and take some business classes.
Well, maybe you could just add in some classes on business to the John White School of Mentoring.
There you go.
Right. Yeah. I'm not teaching. I'm just taking them. That's fascinating. I know that, managing people is a whole different skill maybe than just, business management. Although, maybe there's classes in that, in a business administration degree. I actually have no idea.
I'm actually curious, Kelly, at the point when you said, I don't want to be a manager, what did you think being a manager was all about at that time, and how has that changed a little bit?
Well, it was sort of like the sales. Management was kind of a dirty word. And people that went into management were kind of sellouts. This was a few years ago too, but yeah, the thought of ever actually just managing people, you got the Dilbert pointy-haired boss image, just these terrible caricatures of what it means to be a manager. And I never wanted to be like that.
Well, to be fair, they're completely accurate portrayals of terrible managers, right? But having had some really good managers in my career, I have to say that the job of management is very, being an effective manager, and actually motivating people and looking over their careers and working on their career progression with them. It's something I've, suddenly a lot of respect for.
Well, and I discovered in my previous job how much I loved it. The position I was hired into was kind of the small business IT manager. There was one guy there that hired me basically to be his replacement at some point. But it quickly became apparent that there was too much going on for me to handle. And we staffed up actually to the point where I had 3 people under me by the end of it. And I realized that the things that I loved the most about my job were connecting people within the org to ideas and solutions and developing my team.
That actually sounds very close to technical sales too. So,
what are you accusing me of, John?
And I'm curious about how the technology aspect, the actual doing and fixing of specific technology problems, kind of became something that wasn't as interesting.
That just kind of came over time. It used to be the thing I loved was somewhere between customer service and making things tick. At the 2-year college, I did the full virtualization thing, got them from completely physical and all virtual, and networked their whole infrastructure together. I did the whole deal, all the networking, firewalls, pretty much any technology that was current at the time I had my hands in at some point on some level. And I realized that as time went on, that I was finding less and less enjoyment, not necessarily in making things work, but in the figuring out how to make things work. I had less tolerance for things being broken and having to figure out a fix. So the ratio of, wow, I got that solved, to I really hate this because it's not working, started to move in the negative direction.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have been in that situation where we get tired of the grind. Now, did you, as you began to be, I guess you were trained up to be this guy's replacement? What kind of training did you get on that as that new manager?
It's small business. I mean, it's, you bring the skills in with you, and then whatever you want to get, you um, have to figure it out on the job, fixing the things that are broken. So there really wasn't there was zero managerial training. There was some technical training, but mostly it was just the deep end. But I mean, that's kind of normal. Small business, you wear all the hats, and if you don't know what the hat is like, you try it on and make it work.
There's no O'Reilly book on people management.
Not yet. There can be a John White book of people management, though.
What animal would be on the cover is the question. It's like the Minotaur or like a Hydra.
I think
maybe.
we put that to the vote. Like, let the masses decide, John.
I'm actually interested in that. Maybe I'm nitpicking here, but I'll go ahead and do it. When you said that you were losing your interest in the technology, like building out the technology solution, well, I guess I just gave it away there. Was it that you were not interested in the ideation and the problem solving phase, or were you no longer interested in kind of the follow through, like overseeing the nitty gritty details of that, like kind of plotting process of the actual doing?
Well, that was part of I think the shift for me was because positionally in my job prior to that, I had been the subject matter expert. I had people that were kind of under me. I was kind of a lead, and so I'd do some teaching. But if something needed to get done, I was the one to do it. In that role, I had people that were smarter than me and better than me at what needed to get done. And so for the first time, I was able to go through the ideation, go through the problem solving, and then say, here, make it happen. And they would go do it, and they would do it really well. And so I was able to actually see that my enjoyment of technology was not tied to the implementation.
I don't know. That really sounds like technical sales. Could be right up your alley.
Well, it sounds like a move to enterprise architect as well. Kind of like the AJ Kuftik and Paul Woodward Jr. discussions we had. That's what it sounds like to me.
Well, and one thing that I think kind of steers me away from technical sales, or not necessarily steers me away, but makes it less attractive to me, I think, is that the other thing that I really discovered is how much I enjoyed developing people. So not just finding the solutions, not just connecting people with answers, but giving people opportunities to do more and be better and improve themselves. Kind of everything that I wished I'd had when I was a sysadmin, I wanted to be able to provide for other people. And I think that's what pushed me more into management than into the sales arena.
So the development part, but along with the development comes the hiring and firing and performance management, right? So do you see that as a conflict or as an unfortunate, side job that you also have to do, or as an important, like, integrated part of that, or some fourth option?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a part of the job that I don't prefer. Well, the hiring part is fun. Once I get to the point of hiring, because then it's like, yeah, being able to meet the need, give people opportunities. But dealing with performance, dealing with especially negative performance, that's not fun. I don't know that that'll ever change.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that anybody really like relishes that. Wait, no, I can't imagine that people do relish and get some kind of sick enjoyment out of negative performance reviews. But I mean, that's again would be like ideal of the bad boss, right? Not the good manager.
Yep. Catbert.
Now, did you actually have in the small business role, were you actually in control of how much of a raise people got, or were you more of an intermediary between yourself and someone above you fighting for the person's raise, that kind of thing?
I'd, yeah, if this were a survey on Spiceworks, I'd be checking the influence the decision maker box. So yeah, I didn't have the exact purse strings, but it was based on what I would say. So there was yeah, it was kind of a mixture of whether or not I had to fight for them to get the pay raise. I mean, it was a defense contractor, so money was more plentiful than your typical small business.
Got it. Got it. How about just that transition? Like, I know that there's some people who get out of the, day-to-day doing because of the grind and like the emotional toll that it can take. Is that something that you ever faced and like that, you felt kind of renewed by, finding this new love of managing people and helping them to develop?
Well, my trajectory was kind of interesting, going from the defense contractor to where I am now. I actually burn out at that job. I had made the classic mistake of accepting some responsibilities that were not part of my skill set. So, I mean, I was offered a pay raise, and it was well done compared to what I hear other people go through with things like that. But I accepted the responsibilities, and it did not go well. So over the next 2 years was just kind of, it was a grind, like what you're describing with the technical work. But this was, I mean, they weren't even terrible responsibilities. It was just not what I'm wired for. It was very detail oriented, very record keeping, and I'm not good at that. So I completely burn out. There was also some significant medical issues for one of my children that compounded everything, and I resigned. I mean, there was some things where my boss basically said, if you don't turn things around, we're going to have to encourage you to find a different job. So it wasn't 100% just me saying, yep, I'm out. But actually, he took those responsibilities away from me that I wasn't good at. My performance started improving, and he said, hey, maybe you can stay. And decided, my wife and I, that it was just time to go. But that led to 18 months of unemployment, which was really crazy because I didn't have a single actual interview for 16 of those months.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, not even phone interviews. I submitted so many job applications. I mean, at first I started off, okay, these are the jobs I want. I'm going to apply for only the things that interest me. And then as time went on, it got harder and harder to turn down those, sysadmin 1 jobs, just trying to find something. And, but they never went anywhere. I'm going, if I were the hiring manager, I would have at least called me, because you want to know, well, maybe they're a flight risk, but the person's 90% of our job requirement. So I don't know. It was pretty crazy just living through it.
So
And
can I just it sounds like 2 years is too long to have responsibilities that don't match your temperament. So even if at the end of 2 years you roll that part back, like so much emotional, like so much has been just worn away by that grind that it's kind of very, very difficult to go back and say, oh, okay, now I'm happy now that I don't have to do that stuff. Am I reading you right on that?
yeah, very much so. It was, well, I was burned out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was able to function at what looked like a really high level because it was compared to what I was prior to losing those responsibilities, but it was still um, not sufficient.
Well, you have to walk through the
Yeah,
same doors and you have to sit in the same seat and like breathe the
yeah,
same air and look at the same walls. And like there's everything there that's just reminding you of like what it was like to be ground down, right?
yeah. Well, and I hated my job. I mean, it was one of those things where I woke up in the morning, my stomach hurt and just dragged myself out of bed. Even though, I mean, the organization, aside from this one thing, um, was a fantastic organization. Some amazing people that worked there, and I really loved it, but could not keep on going.
Yeah, once things have gone that badly, it's kind of very, very difficult to turn back the clock, right?
Yeah.
Maybe if they catch it like 3 months in or 6 months in, ooh, you don't look like you're enjoying this. Like, can we like maybe dial the, reverse this because we like you so much? Like, but 2 years in, when all that damage is done, very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And it
But
sounds to me like you ended up being a supervisor instead of a manager, like in too much administrative responsibility, not enough actual focusing on the people. I don't know that for sure based on what you said, but that's what it sounds like. It made me think of a supervisor out in a manufacturing plant who's like, you got to be on it, guys. You got to be in, a lot of keeping the folks in line.
Um, I think I could have been there. Um, the guys I had working for me were fantastic, so I had to do zero motivation. So I think I would have been a supervisor if I would have had somebody that would have required more energy, but because they required so little, I was able to actually do some guiding and some helping rather than just directing.
I can only imagine that defense contractors just have probably tons and tons of like job related detail work and record keeping that they have to do for their projects that they want somebody in the organization to do who probably knows something about what's going on. But I mean, if it was anything to do with that and you had absolutely no interest in it, like I can only imagine that it's just emotional damage over years instead of hey, increased responsibility. They believe in me. Like maybe they mean
Mhm.
it as a good thing, but it doesn't feel that way.
Yeah, I mean, I really when they first brought me in, I was pretty gung ho, because yeah, like you said, they must think I'm pretty awesome to give me this set of responsibilities, and it came with a clearance upgrade, so I could carry a top secret, which is that's pretty shiny. Actually, it's kind of meaningless, but at the time, I thought it was cool.
That's too funny. So now this period where you were applying, um, it really feels like you're at a complete loss as to what was going on. Did you ever find anything like that you changed or did differently, or applied to different jobs, or applied to different ways that seemed to make a difference, or are you still in the dark about it?
No, actually, well, there were a couple of things. One was getting some feedback about dealing with ATS systems. It's redundant. Application tracking systems, kind of working with the algorithms that there's some sites out there basically you post the job description, and then you post your resume, and then they'll say, hey, you hit this many keywords out of the set that are in the job description. And it's basically a way of fooling any algorithm that would filter you out. I don't know actually how much difference that made for me personally, because I wasn't applying to too many jobs that actually would have required that probably had an ATS. I can think of one that I got a phone interview with. The other one was actually from a friend of mine who's not in technology at all, but he counseled me to sell myself, in the sense that this was advice he got from his mentor, which was every line on your resume needs to be something that no one else can say. And the idea was that rather than being like evaluated vendor RFPs for implementation, tell a story in every single line that's real, rather than using these normal words that all the resume generation sites will tell you to use. Instead, tell a story and then make it apply to a bottom line. So rather than just saying, well, we changed the power settings on all the workstations and saved money. We developed this. We reduced, the uptime of all of our systems, so they shut off every night, and that saved the company X dollars over a period of time. And then the other input that he gave me that was really interesting, because I, like a lot of other IT people that I talk to, have a really strong sense of ethics and right or wrong. And so I felt really strange about estimating those numbers, because I felt like I was making them up. And he works as a consultant, and he said, if I were coming in as a consultant, I would ask you for your best estimate, and then I would use that in my report. You're a subject matter expert on your systems. Might not know the exact dollar figures, but you can probably come up with a decent estimate. And he said that's entirely appropriate to put on a resume. Don't guess wildly, but you. So I did that.
Mm-hmm.
I took my resume, I completely rewrote it, took all the bullet points. It was about 3-1, so I'd take about 3 bullet points and put them into one paragraph. I went from 0 interviews, 0 phone calls, to a phone interview and 3 full interviews in just a few weeks.
So it sounds like it's a methodology you believe in.
It certainly worked for me. I mean,
it was like A/B testing that idea. It's like flipping a switch then. So, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, from now being on the other side of it, looking at my own resume and then looking at other people's resumes as they come in, I think, man, this could be so much better if you told a story. So from my own perspective, obviously shaped by my own experience, I feel like it is a better way to write a resume.
It's interesting because you hit on a couple different things there that I think we've talked about before. Having, going to those sites and saying like, here's the position I'm applying for, and here's my resume, and it goes, well, you've hit this many of the keywords, but not these others. It's like subtly, like some people will use that and like say, okay, well, I just need to copy paste those keywords, and it's like, no, really, what you should be doing is writing your resume so that you're telling them, hey, you have these requirements, and here's what I've done before that's relevant to those requirements. Mm-hmm. Right. So because, we've talked about this in previous episodes, is like the hiring manager saying, I have this problem. I need somebody who can do these things. And you want to submit a resume that says, I've done those things to solve that problem before. Right. and that should be immediately obvious in like 15 seconds of just like glancing at it. Oh, this person read the job description and gave me a resume that was relevant and talked about the parts of their job history that were relevant to that job description.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's like you're in the like top 95% right away,
Yep.
right? Because most people are just like saying, here's all the jobs I've had and here's what I've done and here's a copy of it. I haven't read your job description at all.
Yeah, I I rewrote every resume for almost every position, especially there at the towards the end. Um, I mean, sometimes it was a minor change. I'd put in technology names or take them out depending on the job description. So, if they really didn't seem to care about which Windows versions I'd worked with, then, desktop operating systems was sufficient.
That's good stuff. And it seems to speak to the point that it is extremely difficult without someone else's help to see the things that are needed in your own resume.
Mm-hmm.
I know that if John hadn't helped me several times, I might never have learned these things either.
Well, and I think that I learned it from somebody who pointed it out to me, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
only somebody who's like sat on the other side of that that desk, like who's like reading job applications can go, listen, like we told you what we were looking for, and then you're not telling us like whether or not you can do that. Like isn't that like the first thing that you should do in this resume is say, hey, yeah, I can do that, and here's all the times that I've done it before, like. But most people, they apply for a job like once every 7 years, maybe, so they're not experts, and hopefully
Right.
you don't become an expert at applying for jobs, but maybe you should be an expert at like keeping your resume like relevant, right, to potential jobs that are out there, and like document the things that you've done and how they might be relevant for other positions, even internal positions at the company that you're working for. It's just an idea. And then when you do apply for something or you have an opportunity, then you just dust that thing off and tune it up, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I know that, well, my memory's kind of Swiss cheese right now, but just recalling projects that I've worked on and why they would matter, I mean, you lose stuff. So, having that updated resume is going to make a difference when it comes time to, because it's going to come. I mean, I think that's one of the lies that we tell ourselves. I see a lot of professionals do this on the forums that, should I leave my job is a very common topic title on IT forums. And I think for some reason we think that we're going to get a job and we're going to support this company for 50 years and then we're going to retire. And the reality doesn't bear that out.
Yeah, maybe especially if you're in small and medium businesses, like what's the average lifetime of a small business, right? It's probably not 50 years. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm not I don't have any data to back that up, but I'm just going to go out on a limb and say most $25 million a year, in revenue businesses don't last 50 years. So
half of the ones I worked at no longer exist.
There you go.
Or they may just not grow any larger than that, while someone like yourself needs to grow their skills and their career, but that small business can't offer you the thing that's next for you.
Yeah, career progression.
So I have a question for you, Kelly. So during this time that you were unemployed, I know you probably did a lot of soul searching, and it allowed you to spend some time really thinking about, what do I want to do with my career? How did the rewriting of the resume help you decide what you wanted to do, or did it at all?
The rewriting of the resume kind of came at the end. The end of those 18 months. It was a pretty introspective time. I think I started to actually question my competence. It was really difficult. going through, and I've got a lot of empathy for people that go through periods of unemployment now because, when you're applying to, I don't know how many hundreds of jobs I applied for with absolutely zero to show for it. It was kind of one of those, okay, am I not the person I think I am? Am I not as skilled? Are all these rejections actually right about me? Um, and I honestly, I think it's a little bit miraculous that I ended up where I did, because I applied for a lot of jobs that I was qualified for that I would have probably ended up hating, and I ended up at a job doing something that I really love without it really even being on the radar or something that I aimed for specifically. That's not great advice. Hey, everybody, just be unemployed until the perfect job lands on you. It's not really a good formula.
That's not advice that we endorse.
Not part of the John White School of Mentoring curriculum.
No, it's not in the plan. It's very, very difficult, right? And I have a lot of empathy for that situation too. But and also, we tend to like form our opinions of ourselves by the feedback that we're getting, and the feedback that you were getting in that situation was, "You're not worth calling back. You're not worth calling back. You're not worth calling back." And if people say that or demonstrate that to you often enough, then you start to go, well, maybe these people are right. Like it actually takes an incredible ego to like resist like even considering that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really glad that you got through that. It really kind of speaks to the idea that in these positions, especially in small and medium business IT, we don't have the tools, we don't have the training, like we don't have the mentorship that we really need to kind of manage a career, right? There's nobody there to teach us how to manage a career, and that's really, really unfortunate. Like, I mean, hopefully that's actually, I guess, one of the like stated goals of the podcast is to kind of put all this advice out there. So if people are doing a Google search, then hopefully they stumble across it, right?
Right.
So thanks for that, putting that out there.
You're welcome. Glad to.
All right, Nick. Great interview with Kelly Schroeder, at least for part one. Really enjoyed listening to it again. Man, that bit about rebuilding the resume, just gold. I'm really glad to hear, some of our ideas echoed back to us via somebody else who, kind of discovered it on his own as well. And I just really breaks my heart to kind of hear the psychological toll of the burnout and the unemployment period. But I'm really glad that he's back on his feet now.
Yeah, I agree. Man, when you're off for that long, that you really have to do some soul searching. And I am sure people can identify with the imposter syndrome you get of sending resumes out and no hits, and send more out and no more hits. So that's just tough all the way around. I really liked that resume advice about putting quantifiable results, not just rewriting it to the job position, but because I did this thing, it produced this kind of result for the company. That's great stuff.
Yeah, really, really good. It was a really great observation, and the fact that he was able to make that change and then just see that immediate result in the number of responses he was getting, it kind of just validates his experience of what is an actual effective resume.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
No. How about you?
Nope. Just a reminder, we want people to subscribe and give us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. We want to know if we're being helpful and are always looking for interesting questions to ponder. We're collectively on Twitter at Nerd Journey.
All right. Farewell, listeners. Tune in next time as the journey continues. I'm John White, at VJourneyman, for Nick Cordy at NetworkNerd_. Signing off. This is where you say adios.
Adios. Yes. Enjoying the John White School of Mentoring. What jumped out at me the most was the fact that all right, I'm cool. All right, I'm cool.